asking about muted notes in that sus chord video. And it's not something I generally think about. I kind of do it unconsciously now, I guess. So instead of playing the bar chord here, which could get fatiguing, it also kind of limits, your pinky is the main one that's got to do all the little extension work. This one, still your pinky does work, but it's easier to let go of the other fingers while maintaining that root. I think it also makes, the pentatonic stuff, all that stuff's much easier coming out of that and coming out of this. I think one of the keys is normally if you're playing guitar, you're kind of straight on. With this one, you need to angle your hand. So it's angled much differently, and that just makes it much easier to grip the whole thing. I don't think I could play it straight on. That feels like a lot of work on my hand, whereas if I angle, kind of almost drop this part of my wrist down, my elbow down. Now I'm playing at an angle, and that also makes it much easier to grab all that stuff, rather than if I was straight on. It's much harder to get. As far as muting goes, what's happening is I'm getting my thumb, that thumb joint right here, right on that fret, and I'm letting the big kind of fat part of that meat of that pad push down on that string, and then the rest of it is actually resting on that A string. And then you have the triad here. And if I get higher, I can get that open, and if I want to close it off, I would lower my fingers down so that that's muted. Maybe it'll be easier to see if I get the side angle here. So that bottom string is muted there on my index finger, and that A string is muted on that thumb right there. So that way, if you have those muted, you can really attack it. And so if you're new to this, you want to mute it, what you could do is you get your fingers down. Try not to push too hard. I feel like that's always something, even now, I struggle with. You just hold it there, and you can just slowly see what notes are ringing out. And then put on either like a click track or a drum track, and just strum it out for a while. You can move to a different chord if you need the variance. But just get, that's one way to get very comfortable with that. For the other type of muting, I just kind of unconsciously lay my other fingers down. So if I was going to slide, if I was sliding to this little dyad here, I'm not going to mute those notes. I'm going to let this middle finger kind of rest on those strings. Kind of the same thing as like if you're playing an octave, let that middle finger rest there. As far as that kind of that aggressive lead stuff, again, I kind of just lightly let my middle finger or my ring finger rest on the strings. So they're all kind of contacting it. One way to work on that, I think, again, I would definitely put on a drum beat track, because I feel like all this palm muting is very rhythmic, and I think for it to work, you got to be in rhythm. I'll put a link. There's what's his name? Purdie. my God, I'm blanking on his name. Bernard Purdie. Bernard Purdie put out like 2 albums of just his drum beats that are phenomenal. Just put them on, and then you can just, you can either work on that chord, make sure you're muting everything, or you could work on that kind of funky, palm muted, aggressive lead. I would just pick, if you're new to it, I would just pick 4 notes, or even just 2. You just pick part of a pentatonic. Another thing that I would recommend is if you're new to this and you're working on it, I would keep it clean, because you can get away with a lot less and it's a lot more apparent. If you throw on distortion, it can kind of make it easier, but I feel like that's not a great way to learn. If like it's fun, but it's not as I feel like it's a lot tougher to get away with shit clean. The other thing is that on guitar, everybody's got their own hand shape and finger length and palm length and hands. Everybody's, you have your own unique physiology. So I think on guitar, you should always do what's comfortable for you. I don't think there's ever a reason that anything has to be done a certain way. I think it's a bad idea to push through pain to try to do something that, maybe your body doesn't want to do, maybe your hand doesn't want to do. That's not to say there's some uncomfortableness, right? Like if you can bar chords, like we all know to bar a chord, like we had to get through that struggle on that F chord of just pushing down hard and being, muscle sore and finally getting this. So there is just, sometimes a little bit of soreness, but it shouldn't be painful. So it's a thing I'm always working on, is just pushing less hard and almost playing with a lighter touch, which I really struggle with. My second tangent off of that would be that since we all have our own unique anatomy, I think the guitar that's going to work for my hand might not work for anybody else's hand. That's why I feel that for me, how a guitar feels is the number one thing. If it doesn't feel good, like I'm not going to enjoy playing it, and it's going to make playing a struggle, and then my sound is going to be impacted because I'm thinking it brings my head into more the mechanical aspect of the guitar instead of playing something that fits my hand well. I can more just get lost. I remember one time I was at a jam session and my string broke, and I grabbed my buddy's backup Anderson. It was this Anderson Strat thing, and it sounded amazing, phenomenally sounding guitar. But it just my hand just did not fit on it. It didn't feel right. Like my hand had to work twice as hard. I was like fatiguing out with stuff that I usually play for hours. So that's why I think it's, if you're going to buy a guitar, I think you always have to play. Like I'll never order a guitar online for that reason. Like I have to see how it feels in my hand. So if you're playing guitar and everything is really difficult and you're struggling, like maybe it's just the wrong guitar for you. There's a lot of variance in neck shape and fret shape and scale length. And we always need another reason to buy a guitar, right? So that's just something to consider. But yeah, as far as muting goes, I would, if you're struggling, just go slower, play clean, and then you just test it out and see what notes are ringing out. And if you get one that rings out, you don't want that there, just like a light rest on it is all you need. Like my middle finger is pretty rested. I guess a good practice could be octaves. You could always just, that kind of forces that. Or you could do it with your, a good way to work on that resting fingers. I don't know what the fuck you would call that.